What's going on, guys? It's Mike from Powers Crafts and Camping. Today I'm coming at you with another review video. Today's review is the Swiss Army knife Huntsman. So stick around. So I've had this Sak Huntsman for 5-6 years now. It predates my time in the Marines, and it's come in handy countless times. Having this thing in my pocket for the past 5 or 6 years on and off, switching it out with a Leatherman, it just comes in handy so many more times than you can even think of. So most of the time whenever I'm carrying this thing, it's just for obviously everyday carry purposes. I think everyone should have a knife and carry it with them. And I also bring this camping a lot with me. This is my main pocket knife whenever I go camping, just because of the features it has on it. You know, it's got a little wood saw, which I love, and that main blade does a lot of carving for me while I'm out in the woods. This thing, or an SE Azula, but mostly this thing. This thing's a really good carving knife, especially this little knife too. This little knife gets used a lot to get in little tiny notches and stuff. And also MacGyver had one, so if you don't have a Swiss Army knife, you should probably get one. So we're going to go over the tools on this particular model. So this is the Huntsman. It's one of my favorite ones. It's a little bit thicker because it does have a little bit more tools than a lot of the other ones. So on this one, we're going to start from this side, come to the side over here, and then we'll flip to the back. So we have the little blade. That's the little blade. And whenever I'm out in the woods, or I'm out camping, or I'm out fishing, this little blade gets used for cutting small notches mostly. It mostly gets used for cutting small notches, cutting up fishing line, and then I kind of bore holes with this thing too. Next tool is the large blade. This large blade will get used for helping me make spoons, helping me make cooking utensils out in the field. This large blade is also used for helping me carve notches, helping me shave feather sticks, and I use this knife a lot to help start fires. If you check some of my previous videos, you can watch me build and start a fire with just this knife. So the next tool coming out is a little wood saw. I love this little wood saw. It helps with carving notches, it really does. It's very helpful. It lends itself very handy. And you wouldn't think so with how small it is, but it actually does lend itself very handy, and it's a good companion to like a nice folding saw while you're out in the woods. You know, you don't always want to pull your folding saw out, and sometimes you have to cut a branch that's only about 1 inch thick, 3/4 of an inch thick. So this thing comes in real handy. I love it. Next are scissors. I don't really use the scissors too much, but I use them enough to where I like having them on the knife. They really get used for whenever a knife just isn't gonna do what I need it to do. Cutting. I literally use these to cut wrapping paper. I use them to cut stencils out to trace over and stuff for my nieces and my nephew. I have used them to cut fishing line, especially whenever it's really close to a hook. Getting in there and being able to kind of trim it like that instead of having to pull the knife out and try to cut it with the knife and risk severing your finger or the fishing line. They do come in handy. Next, we have the small flathead / can opener. So this thing has gotten plenty of use. It's actually got some rust on it, if we can get it that to focus. These things are really hard to rust, so you know I did something wrong. But can opener, I do use this a lot. The P38 comes in handy, but if you got one of these and a P38 pulling double duty, you're all good. Comes in handy while camping and open up those beans, or you know, whenever you hunt for a can of Bush's baked beans out in the wild and you find it, you can cut it open with the can opener. And next on the list is this flathead here. This is the full-size flathead / bottle opener, and I have modified mine with a 90-degree edge so I can strike a ferro rod with it. Next tool would be tweezers, but if this camera would focus, you would see that mine are missing. because I lost them. So it would be tweezers, which are very handy to get splinters out. But now I gotta use the knife. Boo-hoo. Next is a toothpick. I don't use that toothpick as a toothpick. I use that toothpick to clean the knife. Clean the lint and the dirt out of the knife. I open it up, take the toothpick, scoop all the dirt out, close it up, put the toothpick back in. I don't use it as a toothpick, I use it as a cleaner. Okay, on the bottom, we have an awl, which actually gets used more than you would think. I use that to bore holes in wood, and I've even used it to stitch leather. Actually, if you look behind me, it's a very poorly done job, but this mask I made for this hatchet, the holes were punched with the awl on this thing. And it was tied up with bank tape. Again, that was a poorly done job. I'm not a leather worker, but I did it. Next is this weird hook thing. I don't know what it's used for. I just know that it's there. And next is the corkscrew. I have used that to open bottles of wine. That's the only thing that thing's ever done. So some things that this knife really excels at. It's a very thin blade. This has a very thin blade on it, as you can tell. It's really good at carving, wood. It's good at making feather sticks. It's good at carving handles on spoons and spatulas, and I have used it for that. I've made strops with this knife. I made spoons and spatulas with this knife. Another thing it's really good at is I have used the tip of this flathead as like a scraper. My old house back in Hawaii, our garage had paint all over the ground, and we had to clean it up or else we wouldn't get our safety deposit back. So I literally use this thing as a scraper to scrape all the paint off the concrete ground. It also excels at making notches whenever I'm out camping. It's really good at notching because of that saw. I can make those 7 notches really easily, cut a little curve with the saw and then carve down to it. It's awesome at that. It's a great little camp companion, a great little EDC knife. And another thing is this little blade. I love having more than one blade on a knife because the big blade I can allocate to cutting wood, cutting packages, cutting food, and the little blade I can allocate to shitty tasks like scraping PVC, trying to cut rubber furnicos off a cast iron pipe, and just tasks that you wouldn't normally want to put a knife through, but you do it anyway because you bought it as a tool. So this little blade's really good for that. So some goods about this knife. First of all, it's neutral. It's got a neutral handle. It's not weird any which way you hold it. And I think Victorinox made it that way because they knew that you would have to use it both sides, you know. It folds out either way. Another good thing about this knife is it's very handy and useful. Whenever people buy these big, bulky, hard-use folders, they buy them and they're thick behind the edge. I'm thinking of like the 940 Osborne, any ZT ever made basically, the Benchmade, Griptilian. The Shaman's not really that thick behind the edge from what I've read online, but these hard use folders are really thick and they suck at being a knife first, which is what a knife is supposed to be. It's supposed to cut. So they suck at that, but they're well rounded in being a hard use folder. Something like prying paint cans up, scraping. Whenever people think hard use folder, they think opening cans, prying, stuff like that. This little guy can do that without sacrificing being a knife. You know, prying, and do some light prying with that guy right there. I have done it, and I was afraid it was going to break it, but it didn't. I pried up paint cans with this. Like I said, I've used the tip as a chisel. I used it to scrape ferro rods, and I have done some light prying with it, especially against wood. Like I said, this thing can replace a hard use folder, because a knife is supposed to be a knife first, and this thing can help you do that. Another good thing about this is it's easily modified to strike a ferro rod. Like I said, that big flathead right there, I filed down that the bottom part right there to be a 90-degree edge, so I can strike a ferro rod or scrape shavings off of fat wood with it. It's really good to do that with. I like modifying that. You can use the back of the saw, but the saw can fold in on you. I've heard of people lifting it up and putting a twig in there and holding it down like that, and it holds it open a little bit so you can then flip it over and strike with it. But I just found it easier to modify it. Another note on top of that, a knife should be a knife first. Whenever people look at multi-tools, they're looking at pliers based, which is like your Leathermans and your Gerbers, and they're looking at knife based, which is your Victorinox. So your knife based multi-tools are, it's a knife first and then the tools are added onto that. Pliers based is it's pliers first and then the knife is added onto that, and so are the tools. A Leatherman, I'm not knocking Leatherman at all, I love them, but using their tools as a knife sucks. Granted, this thing doesn't have pliers, but using the tools on this thing as tools and using that as a knife, using it as a knife is not bad. So this thing, I mean, it's a knife first, but it also has those tools and it doesn't sacrifice the ability to use the knife in order to use those tools, whereas Leatherman does sacrifice it a little bit. This thing's also easily sharpened, and it's a really good woods companion, and it's cheap. It's super cheap. I think this model right here is going for about $34. For some people that may not be cheap, but for others like me who spend $200 on knives, that's really cheap. So it's not bad at all. I have put this one through some hard use, as you can see. We got a chip there, the handles are loose, and I named my knives. So this one's name is Jack. I name my knives. So some bads about this knife is it's never the best tool for the job. It's never going to be the best screwdriver. It's never going to be the best knife. It's never going to be the best saw. It's never going to be the best corkscrew. It's never going to be the best tool for any job. But it sure is nice to have it on you whenever you don't have to go back to your truck to go pick up a tool. It's really nice. Another bad thing about this is I wish they got rid of this stupid hook and they put a Phillips head on it. I know some models come with Phillips heads, but I have not seen a model that has all the accoutrements that this one has on the top end, the corkscrew, the awl, and a Phillips head. If you guys know about a model, please tell me about it. I'm gonna buy it. And another thing is the steel's really soft on this thing. I think they run them at like 53 Rockwell, which is super soft for a steel. But the good news is they're really easy to sharpen, and literally, like if you're using a diamond stone or even natural stones, 5 swipes per side, alternating sides, and then stropping it, and this thing's back to brand new, shaving your face sharp. That's what I love about these little thin blades on this thing, is they're really easy to sharpen and they're really nice. Just want to thank you guys for watching today. Just a little brief overview. This is a good knife. I don't typically do reviews on knives that I don't like at least a little bit, and I wouldn't recommend someone buy. So this is a good tool. It's good for a young man who's just growing up and wanting to get into pocket knives, and you want to teach him knife safety. This is a good tool. It's inexpensive to get him or her, if you have a young lady who wants to get into knives or get into woodworking or woodcraft or anything. It's a good little startup knife for them. No problem. And this thing, it comes in really handy. It does. Even though it doesn't have pliers, it still comes in very handy from day-to-day life. Like I said, I just want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment, please like, please subscribe, and please share. And I'll catch you on the next one.